I'm not a big fan of the American medical model because the American medical model pretty much only focuses on the body, okay? I work with mental health and addiction, and what I see all the time with psych docs and physicians and just pretty much everyone throughout the country is that they look at the body very well, but they're leaving the mind and the spirit in particular out. I've actually tried to talk to physicians about, do you work with the mind and the spirit or not? And the fact is they just don't. And yet I see it all the time. We're going to talk about why that's very important, as it leads to both mental health and addiction, but also awakening. And that's something that's going on that most people don't pay attention to. I like to say there's two games. The physical game that everyone's involved in, but there's also the awakening game. And not everyone's playing that game, even though the universe is playing it with them. So I'm going to be talking about some mental health and some spiritual skills that go into our experience and linking it to something called Bayes' rule, which is probably not something that many people have heard of. I hadn't heard of it until recently, when there was an article in physicsworld.com called Bayes' Rule Goes Quantum. Bayes' Rule Goes Quantum. And I was immediately interested because anything that goes quantum, I want to know what that is. Bayes' rule comes from Thomas Bayes. He was an English mathematician and philosopher back in the 1700s. And he came up with this rule here, this formula. I can't describe it other than what it means. I don't know, all these letters, I'll tell you what they mean. But the formula is, what is the probability of something? What is the probability of anything based upon what you already know? Right? Given your state of mind in this exact moment, what's the probability of question mark, okay? And so this applies to all forms of learning. Simply put, on something like this, you go outside, you're not particularly educated on weather, and you see clouds. And someone asks you, what's the probability of it raining? What kind of answer are you going to give? If you don't know that clouds are related to rain, you're going to give a different answer than a meteorologist who understands clouds very well. You walk outside, you see clouds, you understand what rain clouds look like versus the fluffy clouds that don't rain or whatever. And you know this stuff. This fits this formula. But then someone teaches you. Someone gives you some more information. And as you add information to the system, the probability goes up that you're going to give an accurate answer. Logical, right? Someone teaches you about what kind of clouds are rain clouds. Add that to the formula, it works. And that's what this formula says. It's predictive of the probability of something, whatever that might be, relative to what you already know. Another way of thinking of it is, as you learn more, you update via your experience. The letters that are in this, P, E, and H, the P stands for probability, the H stands for hypothesis, and the E is for evidence. But evidence is also experience. Here's where the spirituality comes into it again. Like the Buddha said in the Kalama Sutta, that all you can do is follow your own experience. You don't need a teacher or a preacher. You don't need a religion. You can throw all that stuff out. All you really need is your own experience. Pay attention to cause and effect inside you. That's how you come to awakening. Because your experience will tell you whether or not something is true. Don't read some book and just go based upon what that book says. Now, if the book inspires you, good, okay? But your experience is enough. And that fits this formula quite well. Now, there's a lot of different applications to this formula, but I'm interested in helping people get healthier. Again, the mental and the spiritual aspect that's overlooked all the time. And you can do better when you understand better, when you know better. But it comes with a lot of adversities and challenges, okay? So I like to apply Bayes' rule in the probability of awakening, the probability of someone having empathy, and the probability of someone struggling emotionally. Generally speaking, this third one in particular, when someone is struggling with drugs and alcohol or mental health issues, people assume that there's something wrong, there's something bad. I've long since learned that that's not true at all. It might be true, but the probability for me goes way up that this person might be having an awakening experience, okay? They actually might be struggling because they're having an experience in which they're expanding something that's called the Kli. Now, the Kli in Kabbalah is another name for a vessel, which is ultimately your soul. And I drew a couple different Klis here, different sized Klis. Here's a small one, a little bit bigger, medium size, and a large Kli. And these are vessels, and these vessels are capable of carrying different amounts of substance, you could say. Could be liquid, could be energy, whatever. And so the bigger the Kli, the larger, the greater the capacity, right? And so therefore, the larger, as we were just talking about, the larger negative if it's empty, but the stronger it is if it's full. right? So is it better to be a little vessel or a larger vessel? It all depends. And I'm pretty confident if I go into an American doctor and I say, would you consider the Klee in this, the formula that you're, treating this person with? And generally not. When I work with someone in recovery in particular, I need to meet them where they're at. And if I'm looking at someone who has a big Klee but I treat them like they're little, I'm going to miss them. And if I treat them like they're a big Klee when they're little, I'm going to also miss them. Okay? You got to go to where they're at. Americans don't tend to do this. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into this formula. A lot of stuff that goes into the probability of anything. I need to know how much this person knows. I need to know what is some of the evidence they've gone through. What are some of their hypotheses about life, right? What are some of their world experiences? And then you could start to make an assessment based upon, those types of things, exactly where there might be and what they could be capable of based upon this formula and what they know. So E, evidence, includes some of the stuff I left on the board from the last couple weeks. Now I have evidence over here. We've talked a lot about how we all come from the same source. How many people do you know that think that way? When you get up in the morning, you go face your day, you're like, yeah, got to remember, we all come from the same source. At root, we're all Brahman, and I'm experiencing it as Atman. And Jesus said that we're all the light, and also know you not your gods. Yes, that's how I'm going to approach my day. Now, how many people think that way? But if I meet someone and they think that way, I know they're a larger Klee, okay? They have a greater capacity. Other types of evidence I left up here. Maya, what's Maya? The world is an illusion, okay? We're operating in a physical world that's not even real. Einstein himself, on my little picture over there, says the world's an illusion. All the greatest physicists and the greatest prophets have all said the same thing, the world's an illusion. And yet, how many people operate that way? I know it's an illusion, and I often fail to operate that way, okay? And so, that's another piece of evidence. I'd like to know whether or not people understand that. And then, of course, when it comes to religion and all the greatest teachings and the things that we're told to do, like forgive each other and love each other, how many people know that to be true and actually live it? And if I talk to someone and they'd have never heard of that before, I'm like, okay, probably smaller Klee. That doesn't mean they're worse in any way, just a smaller capacity for darkness or for light. Smaller capacity, that's all. A couple other things I left up here from last week. Schrodinger's cat, Wigner's friend, and Frauchinger-Renner. The science of, again, really smart scientists looking at the world and saying, the world isn't just one thing. It's not objective. The world is actually subjective, and each of us have our own unique perspective. And your perspective is correct given what you've experienced to this point. Hello, Bayes' rule, okay? Based upon what you know, you're doing as well as you possibly can with what you know. If you don't know any better, why would you do any better? If you don't know the world is one and you're supposed to love each other and forgive each other, then if you don't know that, then you're probably not going to do it. In a minute, we'll talk about a cool Buddhist philosophy along those lines, okay? It's very important to know whether or not the other person has a clue about this stuff. And then if they have a clue about it, they might be a bigger vessel. Doesn't mean they're doing it. It does increase the likelihood that they need to be doing it because it's going to create something inside themselves. They might act out a lot. But the fact is if they know this stuff is true, like Wigner's friend and Frauchinger-Renner, the very idea that two people could argue over a fact and both be right, based upon brilliant quantum physicists. And we've been talking about that. Has that really set in? Because it's hard for me to get. I flip a coin, I see heads, you see tails, we're both right, according to physics again. That means we should really stop arguing so much about things. And yet, not many people live that way. And that all goes into this formula. Other stuff I left down here, more philosophical stuff. Remember amor fati? To love your fate, which is what Nietzsche said, that the formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, those who embrace and love their fate. And I talked about how Viktor Frankl said, if your fate is to suffer, you should make it your task. Coming from someone who suffered greatly. He wasn't saying, blame other people, okay? He was saying, if that's your fate, embrace it. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to get out of it. Again, that's what people go to. I'm like, we should just allow people to suffer. No, if you can get out of it, get out of it. But what if you can't get out of it? Like Frankl, when he was in a concentration camp. He embraced it, and he still looked for the love in it. And then you have a couple of this Epictetus line I love so much. Wish that what happens happens as it happens. Not that the next moment happens in a certain kind of way, but as something is happening, you can't change it anyways. So embrace it as it's happening. That's a philosophy that you can add into this formula, and then you see, as we're about to talk about, you see that it works. It's highly effective for a bunch of different reasons. And the world is set up this way. Highly effective, the observer effect. And now we've talked about that a lot. The observer effect has been around for 100 years, and it works with superposition to give you an experience. The way you look at the world is going to affect your world. Now, what if you look at the world with resentment and fear and shame and guilt? Is that going to give you a different outcome than if you look at it with confidence and forgiveness and mercy? Of course, just logical, right? But we weave in the relative vessel size, so to speak, the relative spiritual age. You know, we often talk about old souls, but some people are new souls. Some are teenage souls, okay? And we just assume because we're the same age, we should all behave a certain kind of way. It's not how the world works. So we find ourselves looking at specific truths, scientific truths like the observer effect, and as you apply truth, what does superposition do? It reflects it back to you. Because the wave function collapses, and then the world will show you whether or not it's true. That's physics. Here I've got several different spiritual teachings that back that exact same thing up. 1 Corinthians 13:12, one of my the favorite, most underrated verse in the Bible. We see in a mirror dimly, right? See in a mirror dimly. What does that mean? You're looking in a mirror right now. I'm looking in a mirror too. Everyone is. Why? The world is always reflecting back to you where you're at in the process. Why is it a dim mirror? Because it's not so obvious, is it? It's obvious if you pay attention. Pay attention to the relative filling of the vessel. If you pay attention to that, you're going to notice cause and effect. The more compassionate I am, the more wise I am, the better I feel. The more I apply it, the better I feel. The more I regress into my ignorant ways, okay, the more I trip up and don't apply the things that I know to be true, the more that's going to be reflected back to me. That's why it's a dim mirror, and we're always looking in a mirror. It never stops. Gravity never stops. The observer effect never stops. Superposition never stops. It's always there. People just don't know it. They look at other people and they think, well, that's a different person over there. Nope, it's a dim mirror. If you don't include that in this equation, then, if you don't remember to include it, then you're going to misjudge the person. Once you know that's a dim mirror, things start to change. In the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying here, this passage is so good. Buddhist philosophy. The deepening and understanding of truth comes through contemplation and reflection. As we contemplate what we have heard, learn, if you will, it gradually begins to permeate our mind stream and saturate our inner experience of our lives. Everyday events start to mirror and more subtly to directly confirm the very truths of the teachings. Meaning, as you learn stuff, again, that's Buddhist philosophy. I don't know if they know the physics. I don't know if the physicists know the Buddhist philosophy, but they're saying the exact same thing that was in the Bible, that it's a dim mirror. The world's going to reflect back how well you're learning what it is you're supposed to be learning, which is what this formula says, okay? You have a chance to update your knowledge set via experience, and the universe is going to report back to you whether or not it's true. That's a killer experience, isn't it? It's a great setup, right? You're going to be shown whether or not it's true or not. Go ahead, just keep presenting, see if that works. Keep embracing each other and see if that works. Love each other, see if that works, okay? Keep arguing about things, see if that works. It's always going to get reflected back to you. Here's another Buddhist concept that I like so much. The idea that an awakening is like a bird with two wings, okay? It requires two facets, wisdom and compassion. Wisdom, head knowledge, compassion, heart knowledge. Right? And the teaching is this. How well does a bird fly with just one wing? What if you just have one of those two things? The teaching is you're going to be one bird, one-winged bird trying to fly. Not going to work so well. You want wisdom and you want compassion. You want your head and your heart in alignment. Go read most of the Old Testament. All the teachings of bridesmaids and bridegrooms and all that stuff is about the head and the heart. Right? Most male-female talk is about the head and the heart. It's not about biological stuff. Now, not most people don't know that. Most people think it's literal, and as a result, this formula comes into play. But when you know it's talking about energy and spirit and light and love, and now all of a sudden the equation changes. And as you add that, guess what? The expectation is going to be you're going to do a better job at that, which brings us to Luke 12:47 and 12:48. About my favorite Bible verse. I don't know why I always say about my favorite Bible verse. They're all my favorite. They're like tied for first. Okay, but this one is especially good. Luke 12:47. When you know your master's will, get a pen ready to go. When you know your master's will, but you don't make ready according to his will, you will receive a severe beating. So here's where some of the evil comes in. If you know better, because you've either learned some of this stuff or you like to think you're better than other people or whatever the case may be, whatever you've done and your kli has grown and you're a larger vessel and you don't do the master's will, which is all the spiritual teachings, you'll receive a severe beating. This is why we struggle. Ask my wife. I struggle on a regular basis because I get up here preaching this stuff and I'll go home and I'll worry about whether or not the Steelers are going to beat the Browns on Sunday. And when I do, I'm going to suffer, and I deserve to suffer, okay? But that, and when I struggle with, family members and friends struggling with things and I don't trust the system, I participate, but I can trust. Amor fati, I don't get to teach love your fate and then not follow through on it. I even understand what it means, but I better love my fate too. And if I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be doing, then I'm this smaller vessel, that's different. That's the next verse in the same passage. If you don't know the master's will and you do what deserves a beating, your beating will be less severe. Because based upon these drawings, this one's not going to suffer as much as this one. There's plenty of ignorant people out there. They might even be happy. Why? Because it's not that hard to fill a small vessel. There, I just filled it. Small vessels get filled very easily. Just like it's pretty easy to make a 5-year-old happy. Give them a snack, nap time, let them go play. All right. Don't give them too much responsibility now. And they'll be pretty good. Well, there's plenty of people in the world that are small vessels and they're filled. And so they're good right where they're at. But their vessel hasn't started to expand yet. Kabbalah says it's up to like 90% of the people in the world have spiritual embryos. They haven't started to expand. That's why so many people are out there. They're happy and they're maybe ignorant. Remember, can you tell if someone has empathy based upon this model? Absolutely. If you just knew the size of someone's kli, you would know, probably not that much empathy. And then it's like, now it makes sense, right? Clearly logical. But when you know something like this and you expand, now we've got the rest of this verse, Luke 12:47, 12:48. To those whom much has been given, much is expected. And a lot of that is just consciousness. It's wisdom and compassion. You have more consciousness, you have more wisdom, you have more compassion. Guess what? This is your vessel. And so here you have a little happy-filled vessel, and here you have a half-filled bigger vessel. Well, which one's more miserable? Well, this one, of course, because look at all that emptiness. And this one's totally miserable in between, okay? It's bigger than this, but it's not learned how to fill it yet. The world is set up, the whole universe is set up to teach us awakening. You're going to learn, as all the various teachings say, that you're Brahman, okay? You're going to learn, like Jesus said, you are a son of God. You are God. Know ye not, he said. Right? Buddha's first awakening was, revelation is, we're all Buddha. Right? All the teachings. They all say the same thing. And so the more you get into this journey, the bigger the vessel you are, the more potential emptiness. So I'll meet people like a heroin addict, right? And I'll find out fast. I'm like, see, they think it's a problem. I like to trust that the world knows what it's doing. Addiction's not a bad thing. It's a challenge. But as one overcomes it, and they learn how to fill it, okay? Because that's what happens all the time. You weren't craving heroin. You weren't craving alcohol. You were craving the Holy Spirit. And when they get filled with that, it's like, that's what I was looking for. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. That's what everyone's looking for. See, now I know that's true. And so you put that into my formula. When I meet someone, I better apply it. And if I don't apply it, I'm going to suffer. Okay? So that leads us to the last verse. John 19:30, in which Jesus on the cross, his very last words, he says, it is finished. Into thy hands I commend my spirit. What does that mean? What size vessel, what size kli do you suppose Jesus was? Oh, he was the biggest, okay? Obviously. I would put the other prophets in there too. Large vessels need to get filled. When Jesus teaches, if your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light, what's he talking about? Single eye, one-pointed focus. It's to know what the truth is and then live it and apply it and focus on it. It's not good enough to go, yeah, I know I should forgive. I'll get around to it next year. No, once you know you need to do it, you better do it. And then you struggle if you don't. But a lot of people don't understand, or people haven't gone through the adversity. For most part, rich people are this vessel. That's not a judgment, that's just fact. People have not gone through adversity, their vessel haven't really expanded yet. What does Jesus say? Harder for them, a camel to get through an eye of a needle from that thing to get into the kingdom of heaven. Because this is how you get into the kingdom of heaven. You keep filling this. So when he says it is finished, what is finished? What is he referring to? He's referring to not, granted he fulfilled the law, but the law he came to fulfill wasn't man's laws. It was the spiritual law that we're talking about right now. You are also a God, as Jesus himself said. And the Torah says, you're a God, a child of the Most High. You are also capable of awakening. Your journey will continue until you have filled the whole vessel. You will expand to the size of the Christ, and then you will fill it. That's what's going on here. Kabbalah teaches this beautiful teaching. You can't expect a rose seed to grow into a stalk of wheat. Why would it? What is a rose seed designed to do? To grow into a rose bush. Can it do anything else? No. You were designed to nurture the Christ within. Or pick your religion. We can do all the rest of them, okay? All of them. Or just the physics of it. Doesn't matter. Compassion is being encouraged in you. It's being evolved in you. Wisdom is being evolved in you. It's being done to you. You can go with the flow of it. That's very Taoist. And if you go with the flow of it, guess what happens? You get filled with this vessel. And at the end of his crucifixion, which of course is a wonderful metaphor for this whole process, because it hurts to grow, doesn't it? It hurts to have difficult experiences, right? It's very challenging. And yet the teaching is amor fati. You're going to have to love it one way or another. That's your journey to figure out. Now, it's good to do it as teammates, you know. It's better that way. I'm like, well, what'd you go through? What'd you go through? How'd you learn how to love it, okay? And what does love mean, after all? Remember, you don't have to like your human experiences. You just have to love them. That's a big difference. We're talking about agape. And as I fill and as you fill and we get there, Jesus says, it is finished, because he finished. He said that moments after he said, I thirst, right? Because he had just said, Father, why have you forsaken me? There was a moment where he was feeling some extra pain and some doubt because it was hard work what he was doing. But then he asked, he said, please, I thirst. He wanted a little bit more spirit. Ask and you'll receive. And then he was finished. His crucifixion was done, just like yours, just like mine. All of us will be crucified. We will pick up our cross and carry it, and we will expand to the Christ. And if you know that's true, okay, guess what? Big vessel, you better be filling it. And if not, what are you going to do? You're going to suffer a lot. And there's a lot of people that come to the world and they struggle. They experience that. But I also know, if you're good, wherever you're at here, if you're filling these vessels, I'll know you'll have more empathy. Clearly. It makes sense. And people who lack the Spirit, they lack the light, they don't have much empathy. It's just that you know that they're going to go through this process too, which makes it fair. Okay? So in the end, he says, it is finished, into the hands I commend my spirit. He's literally saying, now that I have filled my human vessel with the very spirit that I came from, the Brahman that we've been talking about, the Atman that we are in form, the Kli, again, I'm mixing Hinduism and Judaism. Anybody offended? Okay, with Christianity? Well, see how it all comes together? If I pull them all together, what I've got is a filled vessel of the very Brahman energy, which is the source. Ultimate reality is one, experienced by many. And I can only do that if I love you as myself, and vice versa. I can only do that if I forgive you and forgive myself. And that is the full vessel. And when that vessel is filled, I don't think I can fill it anymore. But as that vessel is filled, guess what? Your journey is done too. You are now the Christ. You are now the Buddha. Okay? You have Krishna consciousness. Your journey is done. I just like to call it tenure. And we end on this. The American medical model doesn't know any of this. Okay? Good luck going into a doctor saying, yeah, I was listening to some dude the other day talk about Kli and, the expansion of the vessel into Brahman and stuff like that. And they're going to be like, yeah, just take your pill. Okay? Just shut up. Take your pill. Okay? Do I have anything against pills? No. But if that's all we got in this formula, we're going to stay smaller vessels. Okay? It's excellent mental health to understand truth. And it's even better mental health to apply the truth.